for 2023, we thought that China is, as you said, care about the reputational damage, that they don't want to be portrayed as bully, that they don't want to be portrayed as the one being aggressive in the West Philippine Sea. But in 2024, last year, things have changed. We saw China that is more aggressive. In 2024, it's our first time to experience China Coast Guard vessel using jet stream water cannon,
Right.
directly targeting our communication and navigation equipment without hesitation, whether it will be destroyed or not. We also saw China Coast Guard directly ramming our Coast Guard vessel while we were staying in Skoda Shoal. And we also saw China Coast Guard deploying a lot of small boats, outnumbering our Philippine Navy when they did the resupply mission last June 17 of 2024. So this level of aggression compared with 2023 has tremendously increased. So the question, as you
exactly.
said,
So
is
what explains that?
what explains that,
Yeah.
right? In our analysis, there are four reasons how we can explain this. The first one is that Xi Jinping is wanting to challenge how those countries who are supportive of the transparency initiative to check whether how far they can go. If ever Xi Jinping would elevate this to this level, under the threshold of armed attack, how far can the U.S. and its allies can go? So that's the first objective. The second objective is that the transparency initiative is basically globally known, and it even reached the domestic audience of Xi Jinping. His concern is that those domestic audience not to interpret that he's backing down in the realization of his China dream and to still portray himself as the strong man more capable of delivering such commitment, right? So what he did is to still elevate the aggression despite of the widely known resentment of
So
the
he had to
Western
weigh
countries.
his options.
Yeah.
Like, I better risk international reputation than risk being seen weak at home.
Yeah. And then the third one is, of course, Xi Jinping also worries about the Southeast Asian neighbors,
Right.
particularly Indonesia, Malaysia, and Vietnam, that they have to make sure that these countries will realize that if they're going to go on the transparency path, they might also be experiencing the same level of aggression, like water cannoning, direct hit, direct ramming, those kind of things. So for China, for Southeast Asian countries to be threatened, they have to elevate the level of aggression. And I think the fourth reason in analyzing Xi Jinping is the most compelling one. We believe that the fourth reason of Xi Jinping is to outright convince the Philippine government to be silenced about their aggression.
Right.
They believe that as they increase the level of aggression, their main objective is to convince the Philippine government to stop transparency at the level that they would think that the level of aggression has reached so badly that you will no longer be brave enough to.
So they want to
expose it.
bludgeon us into silence and submission.
So those are the four
Factors.
ways that we can interpret why China is elevating the level of aggression.
And how are you coping with the change? Because this is a back and forth, right? It's dialectical, right? So probably you won round one, and then round two they came with the counter punch. What without giving away, your cards? How is the Philippine Coast Guard in particular, coping with this evolution in China's approach?
Well, if we're going to look at those 4 points, we can see how the Philippine government has been coping with those beliefs of Xi Jinping. For the first one, looking at the supporters of the rules-based order, we were able to deepen our security cooperation, not just with the United States or Japan, but even for other countries outside, the members of the European Union, right? So the countries are still stepping up as they elevate their aggression. Something that they have also going to consider in the next coming months. The second is the domestic audience. We never get tired of amplifying our factual narrative. We still believe that our engagement in social media, in multilateral track 1.5 dialogues that we have internationally and locally also reach the Chinese academic. And I don't think that they are not that rational being to understand the logic and legitimacy of what they're pushing for in China. And then the third one, for Southeast Asians, you know, October last year is something that I will never really forget in our fight in
Right.
the West Philippine Sea. Because last October, this is the first time we saw Vietnam once again adopting the transparency efforts. This is the first time that the Vietnamese released a press statement saying that the Vietnamese fishermen were harassed and even experienced aggression on the part of the Chinese Coast Guard. Um, October also was last year was also the time that the Indonesian government said that they have deployed their Indonesian Navy and Bakamla, the
Right.
counterpart of the Coast Guard, to drive away the Chinese Coast Guard. And then third, October also was the month that Greg Pauling mentioned about the presence of the Chinese Coast Guard and Lucuña Shoals.
This is the director of the AMTI. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. At
And
CSIS in Washington.
when
DC.
Prime Minister Anwar was asked about that information, he still said that despite of their presence, without denying it, that the China Coast Guard are really in Lucuña Shoals, that they are exercising their own sovereign rights. So these, for me, these are baby steps
Right.
to say that the transparency efforts that we are doing in the Philippines is something that is already being replicated by our neighbors.
Which is China's fear, right?
Which is
That's
China's
exactly
fear.
that there will be a demonstration effect, that you will encourage more and more countries to fight back, and maybe that's why they want the Philippines to stop it,
Yeah,
because
and
they're
that-
saying you're inspiring
Yeah,
others.
and that goes back to my fourth point.
Yeah.
For President Bongbong Marcos to make sure that the transparency efforts will still continue. As what he said last week, we're still going to continue what we're doing. That is deploying our Coast Guard vessels, documenting it, and telling the world that what they're doing is
Right.
illegal. And as we assert firmly our position in the West Philippine Sea.